Welcome to this session where we are going to look at organic chemistry, specifically ketones. What are ketones? So let's define what ketones are. Even before we look at the structure, the nomenclature of ketones, and also how to name ketones. So let's start with defining what ketones are. So what are ketones? So when you're talking about ketones, they are just organic compounds which have a functional group of this kind. So the functional group of this kind. So this is what we call a ketone. They are compound with a carbonyl functional group. This is what we call a carbonyl functional group. Okay, so we might have this carbonyl there, then attached or bonded to a certain aryl group and another aryl group. So this is what we call a ketone. Now, the rules for naming alkanes, they still apply even here. We said when you're naming a certain alkane or when you're naming a certain compound which have different substituents, we first number or we first consider the parent chain and we give the lowest carbon chain. Okay, we first number the lowest or we assign rather the lowest continuous carbon chain to the parent chain, and that will be the parent name of a certain compound. So we assign the lowest carbon continuous chain, then that will be the parent name. Okay, so same applies to ketones. You need to select which one is first the lowest continuous carbon chain, and that lowest continuous carbon chain should contain a ketone for you to be able to name a certain structure. Okay, so we need to understand that. So let's look at what should be the nomenclature. Let's look at nomenclature of a ketone. So when you're dealing with a ketone, the suffix for a ketone always end with on. This is not one, it is on, O-N-E. Then the prefix, just like aldehyde, the prefix also for this ketone will always end with oxo. So we need to understand that the suffix is the one which ends with on, just like an aldehyde, it ends with a, l, but for the suffix is on, which is O-N-E, but for the prefix is oxo, just like that of an aldehyde. So it's very important that we understand that. So now let's look at how to name certain ketones. Let's have a structure. So we've said the prefix has oxo, the suffix has on. So let's have this structure. Let's say this is the structure, then we have the double bond there, the carbonyl group. So we name this, if we name from the left to right, so we have 1, 2, 3. But if we name from the right to left, we have just this carbon is existing as carbon number 1. But if we name in this manner, or as carbon number 2, sorry, there is another carbon here. If we name from left to right, we have 1, 2, 3. It is existing as carbon number 4. So we assign the lowest value or the lowest number to the parent chain. So we'll go from right to left instead of from left to right. So at position number 2, that's where we have this carbonyl group. So what would be the name of this ketone? So we're going to say this ketone will be, because it has, how many carbons does it have? It have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it is pent, that is 5, so it will be pentane. But pentane, we are going to remove E, just like we were doing with aldehyde. Then we're going to replace with the on. The suffix is on, as we said, ONA. But because there is this carbonyl which is at position number 2, we need to state the position like 2, then on. So this is the name of this ketone. Let's look at another example. Let's say I have this structure like that. Then I have a double bond there. So how can I name? I need to assign the lowest number to this ketone. So the lowest number should be to the carbonyl group. So 1, 2, 3. Instead of having 1, 2, 3 at position number 4, I'll have 3 instead of 4. So I'll name it from right to left rather. So that is 4, 5. It has 6. So this is hexane, right? This is hexane with 6. So hexane. But instead of putting E, I'll remove E. I'll state the position of the position of this carbonyl group is at position number 3. So I'll say hexane 3 on. But remember, we have a double bond there, so this is not an alkane but instead an alkene. So I'll remove this in there. So I'll state the position of the double bond. So I'll say hex. Where is this double bond? At position number 5. So I'll say 5. Then so let me write it properly there. So it's hex 5 like that in, then 3 on. So that is how to name this compound. Let's have another example. Let's have this. So this is a fractionized ketone. We have an alcohol. Okay, we have an alcohol there. A ketone has a higher priority than an alcohol, so the parent name should be a ketone. Should be a ketone, not an alcohol. So let's name. When naming, we need to start from an alcohol. So how are we going to name it? So 1, 2. At position number 2, we have that alcohol. Then 3, 4, 5. Because an alcohol is not a parent name, so we give the name to the substituent. The substituent should have the smallest possible value or number, right? So this is not an alcohol but it's an hydroxy because it's a substituent. So I'll say it's at position number 2. We have an hydroxyl. Then it has 5 carbons, so this is a pentane. But I'll remove E. Instead of saying pentane, I'll put ONE because this is a ketone, so it will be pentane on. But I need to indicate where is this carbonyl group. Is at position number 3, so it's very important that I indicate the position. So I'll say pentane at position number 3, then on, like that. So this is the name of this compound. Let me have maybe a certain compound whereby it's the functional group is no longer a parent chain but a substituent. Let me have this structure. So you have this group there which is an aldehyde. Then let's say that's where we have this carbonyl. Okay, so I'll get to number from an aldehyde 1, 2, because aldehyde have a higher priority in the priority symbol. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? There are 5 carbons, so this should be a pent because of 5. But because this is the parent name and not the ketone, it is an aldehyde, so this carbonyl is acting as a substituent. So because it is acting as a substituent, it would be a prefix, and we said the prefix for a ketone it's oxo. So where is this oxo? It has position number 4. So we are going to say at position number 4 we have an oxo. Okay, then this is a pentane, right? So I'll say pentane. But because this is an aldehyde, remember when an aldehyde is a suffix, instead of having pentane E, we remove this E and we put AL, pentano. Okay, AL indicating that this is an aldehyde. And we don't need to mention the position of the aldehyde group because it is always at the first carbon. If it's not at the first carbon, then that is not an aldehyde. So that is the name. It is 4-oxopentano. Okay, now let's look at what if this one was in a structure form. We have a ketone in a structure form, right? In a cyclic form, rather. In a structure of a cyclic form. Let's say I have this ketone, it's here. Okay, then maybe I have even the double bond. So what I'll need to do here, I'll number from this ketone, I'll number as 1, then 2, 3, 4. As position number 4, I have 2-methyl, right? I have 2-methyl. Then at position number 2, I have a double bond. So what would be the name? So I'll start with these methyl groups. So I'll say that at position number 4 we have 2. So I'll say 4,4. Okay. Okay, 4,4. And to make it interesting, let me put maybe this other methyl group is at position number 5. So I'll say 4,5. Then how many methyl group do we have? There are 2. So I'll say dimethyl. Then this is a cyclic structure. So because it's a cyclic structure, I'll say cyclo. Okay, it is cyclo. Then how many carbons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has 6, so it is hexane. So hex. I'll say hex. I'll say the position of the double bond as position number 2. So I'll say 2, because this is supposed to be in, right? But this is not an alkene. It's a ketone. So I'll say in. Then I'll state the position of this carbonyl group is at position number 1, right? So I'll say 1. Then we said for the suffix of the ketone, we put the suffix will be on, right? So I'll have on there. I should have on. So you include on as the suffix at the end there. So the name is 4,5 dimethyl cyclohex 2-in 1-on. So that is the name of this compound. So that is how you name these ketone compounds. Thank you for watching.